70,000 soldiers, 54 war elephants, scythed chariots with blades spinning from their wheels, the largest Hellenistic army ever assembled in Asia Minor, and they're about to face 30,000 Romans who've already crossed the known world to get here. December 190 BC, near Magnesia and Sipylum in Lydia, modern Manisa, Turkey. The fate of the eastern Mediterranean is about to be decided on a rain-soaked plain between two rivers. Antiochus III, they call him the Great. He's spent decades rebuilding what Alexander left behind, reconquering Syria from the Ptolemies, campaigning deep into Central Asia. He earned his title. Now the Romans are in his backyard, and they're not leaving. What you don't hear about is what happened next. Where Hannibal went after Zama, the man who nearly destroyed Rome fled to the Seleucid court to Antiochus. The Romans didn't forget. They never do. And when Antiochus pushed into Greece in 192 BC with 10,000 infantry, 500 cavalry, and 6 war elephants, Rome saw not just territorial ambition, but the ghost of Hannibal whispering strategy in the king's ear. The Aetolian League had invited him, promised support, told him Greece was ready to throw off Roman protection. It was a trap. At Thermopylae in April 191 BC, Rome crushed Antiochus's expeditionary force, the same pass where 300 Spartans held Persia. This time, Antiochus ran, back across the Aegean to Ephesus. Rome could have stopped there, secured Greece, gone home. They didn't. They wanted Asia. Then at Myonessus in September 190 BC, Hannibal himself commanded the Seleucid fleet at the Battle of Eurymedon in August 190 BC, his last military command, and lost. The sea belonged to Rome. By autumn 190 BC, the consul Lucius Cornelius Scipio Asiaticus crossed the Hellespont with the Roman army, first Roman force ever to set foot in Asia Minor with hostile intent. Lucius was the consul, but everyone knew who really commanded. His older brother rode with him. Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus, the man who beat Hannibal at Zama in 202 BC, the most famous Roman general alive. Antiochus tried negotiating. Romans demanded he abandon everything west and north of the Taurus Mountains, every city in modern Turkey, Syria, and Mesopotamia only. Antiochus refused. He gathered his army. Between each unit, 2 war elephants, 22 elephants total integrated into the phalanx. Indian elephants, the big ones, with armor on their heads, crests, towers on their backs, carrying 4 soldiers each plus the driver, the tanks of the ancient world. 3,000 cataphracts, fully armored cavalry, 6,000 total spread across both flanks. Galatian infantry, Cappadocian mercenaries, Dahai horse archers who could fire backward from the saddle at full gallop, Arab camel riders, Mysian bowmen, Sirtian slingers, Elamaean archers. And at the front, the terror weapon, scythed chariots, blades extending from the wheels designed to slash through infantry formations. Appian called it an army that looked like 2 armies, one to begin the fight, one held in reserve. 70,000 men. Livy and Appian both confirm it. The Romans had 30,000, 20,000 legion infantry in the classic triplex aces formation, Hastati youngest in front, Principes veterans behind them, Triarii the old guard in the rear, supporting troops from Italian allies. 3,000 cavalry under Eumenes. 2, king of Pergamon, who brought his own forces and had everything to lose if Antiochus won. Eumenes' kingdom bordered Seleucid territory. If Rome lost, Pergamon would be swallowed. 3,000 Achaean infantry and light troops from Greece. 16 African elephants, smaller than the Indian breed, kept in reserve because Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, commanding the legions, knew they'd panic facing the bigger beasts. Scipio Africanus fell ill before the battle. Some sources say he was still in camp giving advice. Others say he couldn't stand. Domitius took tactical command of the legions. Eumenes commanded the cavalry on the right wing. Lucius Scipio held the center. On paper, Antiochus should win. More than 2-to-1 advantage. Better cavalry, better elephants, home terrain. If you value documented ancient military history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual, using sources from Livy's Ab Urbe Condita Libri Book 37, written in the 1st century BC, our primary Roman source, and Appian's Syriaca, written in the 2nd century AD, which offers a Greek perspective and independent details that cross-check Livy's account. Both historians were writing from earlier sources, including, potentially, Polybius, who was closer to the events, and both provide troop numbers, formations, and battle sequences that modern historians at Cambridge University Press in their 2025 analysis of Seleucid military. Organization confirm match archaeological evidence from the period. Now back to the information. Same ground where the Seleucids won the Battle of Corpedium in 281 BC, opening Asia Minor to Seleucid control. History about to reverse itself. For 5 days they lined up, stared at each other, didn't engage. Psychological warfare? Antiochus sent 1,000 Galatian and Dahai cavalry to harass the Romans, try to draw them into open ground where his cavalry superiority would dominate. Romans refused to move. Scipio wanted to fight before winter, before a new consul arrived from Rome who'd take credit for the victory. But he also wanted terrain that limited Antiochus's cavalry. The Romans moved their camp into a horseshoe-shaped plain 4 kilometers from the Seleucids, bordered by the Phrygios River on the left and the Hermos River on the right. Natural barriers to prevent flanking. Antiochus had to react. After a week of refusal, his own men were getting demoralized watching such a small force challenge them. He came down to fight. Livy says the moisture took elasticity out of bowstrings and thongs. Bad for archery, bad for slings. Both sides knew it. Antiochus deployed his army with the phalanx in the center between the 2 rivers. He took personal command of the right wing, closest to the Phrygios. 3,000 cataphracts, 1,000 agama, the royal guard cavalry, 1,000 argyraspides, the Silver Shield's elite infantry, 1,200 Dahai horse archers, 2,500 Mysian archers, 3,000 Cretan and Illyrian light infantry, 4,500 Sirtian slingers and Elymaian archers, 16 elephants in reserve behind him. On the left wing opposite, his son Seleucus and nephew Antipater commanded another 3,000 cataphracts, the companions, heavy cavalry, 6,000 light infantry, Galatian foot soldiers, Cappadocian mercenaries. In front of the left wing, scythed chariots. In front of them, Arab camel archers. The chariots and camels were the first strike, meant to break Roman formations before the main lines collided. Romans deployed with the left on the Phrygios, only 4 squadrons of cavalry there, 120 horsemen, because the river protected that flank. The entire cavalry force, nearly 3,000, massed on the right under Eumenes, facing Antiochus's left wing. Eumenes had 800 Pergamene cavalry, the rest Roman and Italian. In front of them, 3,000 Achaean and Pergamene light infantry, 800 Cretan and Illyrian archers. The 16 African elephants stayed behind everything, useless against the Indian breed. Antiochus looked at the Roman formation and supposedly asked Hannibal, who may or may not have been present, sources conflict, whether his vast army would be enough for the greedy Romans. Hannibal's reply, recorded by multiple sources, "Quite enough for the Romans, however greedy they are." Cold sarcasm. Hannibal had seen Roman discipline at Zama. Numbers don't win wars, systems do. The missiles hit the horses, hit the camels. Animals panicked. The scythed chariots, supposed to be the terror weapon that would carve holes in Roman lines, turned and fled through their own cavalry before they ever reached the enemy. Appian describes it: the chariots, hit by arrows and stones from Eumenes' skirmishers, lost control and plowed back into the Seleucid cataphracts and supporting infantry behind them. Chaos on the left wing before the main engagement even started. The cataphracts, heavy armored cavalry, couldn't maneuver fast enough with the weight of their armor. Horses stumbled, men fell, Arab camel riders bolted. The entire Seleucid left descended into disorder within minutes. His Pergamene cavalry, the Roman horse, the Achaean infantry hit the disrupted Seleucid left with everything. The Galatians broke, the Cappadocians ran, the mercenaries fled. The cataphracts, unable to turn quickly in their armor, were surrounded and killed to the last man. Appian. Unable to turn and fly quickly on account of the weight of their armor, they were captured or killed. Eumenes shattered the entire Seleucid left flank within the first hour. Now the Macedonian phalanx in the center was exposed, left side unprotected. Roman and Pergamene cavalry free to wheel into the flank of the 16,000 phalangites who were the core of Antiochus's army. He led his cataphracts and Agema cavalry in a charge against the Roman left wing, the weakest point with only 4 cavalry squadrons and exposed infantry. The Dahai horse archers fired into the Latin infantry. The argyraspides' elite infantry smashed into the legionaries. Antiochus himself at the front, personal courage, leading the charge. The Roman left broke, fell back toward the camp. Antiochus pursued them. Livy says he chased them all the way to the Roman fortifications, where the tribune Marcus Aemilius organized a defense. The camp held. But Antiochus kept pushing, kept attacking, trying to crack the Roman rear. He was winning his side of the battle. Complete success on the right. He didn't know his left had collapsed. He didn't know the phalanx was surrounded. The cavalry pursuit took him too far from the center, same mistake he made at the Battle of Raphia in 217 BC, 27 years earlier. Victory on the wing, disaster in the middle. Eumenes' cavalry free. Right flank committed to a pursuit that had taken Antiochus off the field. The phalanx stood alone. 16,000 men in dense formation with 22 elephants between their taxis. Domitius ordered the attack, Roman legions from the front. Pila, heavy javelins, thrown into the phalanx ranks. Darts, arrows, stones from Roman light troops. The phalanx held, 50 men wide, 32 deep, interlocking pikes, trained in the Macedonian style. They started a slow, organized retreat toward their camps, still in formation, still deadly. The Macedonian phalanx had dominated battlefields from Philip to Alexander to the successor wars for 130 years. This was their final stand. Under missile fire from Roman archers, slingers, javelin men, projectiles hitting their legs, their heads, their towers, the beasts, trained but still wild at their core, started trumpeting, started moving erratically, broke out of their assigned positions. Livy describes what happened next. The elephants, maddened by wounds, rampaged through the phalanx itself, trampled their own men. The gaps between the taxias, designed to hold the elephants, became killing zones as the beasts stampeded. Phalangites broke formation, trying to avoid being crushed. Once the phalanx lost cohesion, lost that tight interlocking pike wall, it was finished. Roman legionaries in their flexible manipular formation, designed for exactly this kind of broken field combat, pushed into the gaps. The Macedonian phalanx, unbeatable in formation, helpless when dispersed. Eumenes' cavalry hit the phalanx from the left flank and rear simultaneously. 16,000 men surrounded, under attack from all sides. They tried forming squares, pikes facing outward in every direction. Appian. Forming squares facing all sides, the phalangites tried to march off the battlefield. They couldn't, too slow, too exposed. The Roman legions broke into the formations, swords against pikes in close combat. Swords win. The elephants kept stampeding. Livy's description of the slaughter: a greater peril to the fugitives, the chariots and elephants and camels being mingled with them, was the disordered mob of their own men, since their ranks once broken. As if blind, they rushed one over the other, or were trampled down by the charging beasts. The phalanx disintegrated. Men threw down their sarissas, the long pikes, and ran. The Roman legions pursued. Eumenes' cavalry trampled fleeing infantry. The Seleucid army broke for their camps. The Romans followed. First assault on the camps repulsed. Second assault succeeded. The legionaries, angry, carried out a massacre inside the camp. Livy, 50,000 Seleucid infantry dead, 3,000 cavalry killed, 1,400 captured, 15 elephants taken. Roman losses, 349 men. Appian gives similar figures, 56,000 Seleucid dead. Modern historians, accounting for ancient exaggeration, estimate 10,000 Seleucid dead, 5,000 Roman casualties. Even with modern adjustments, it's a catastrophic defeat. 2/3 of Antiochus' army gone in one afternoon. Antiochus returned from his successful pursuit to find his center destroyed, his camps taken, his army scattered. His son Seleucus had survived, commanding the left wing that broke first, fled north to Apamea. Antiochus himself rode to Sardis, then to Apamea to meet Seleucus. The defeat triggered a cascade. Garrisons at Sardis, Ephesus, Thyatira, Magnesia, and Sipylum, cities that had been Seleucid for decades, surrendered to Rome when they heard. The Seleucid fleet withdrew from Ephesus to Patara. Antiochus sent envoys Zeuxis and Antipater to negotiate. Truce signed at Sardis in January 189 BC, 1 month after the battle. Antiochus agreed to everything Rome demanded, abandoned all claims west of the Taurus Mountains, paid a war indemnity. The terms, recorded by Appian and Livy, verified by modern scholars at Cambridge, examining the political implications, published in June 2025. Antiochus surrendered all of Asia Minor, modern Turkey gone, confined to Syria, Mesopotamia, and western Iran. 15,000 euboic talents of silver as indemnity, 500 talents immediately, 2,500 when the Senate ratified, then 1,000 talents annually for 12 years. That's roughly 450 tons of silver, 990,000 pounds. The largest war indemnity in ancient history to that point. He also had to surrender all war elephants, limit his navy to 12 ships, could build more only if attacked, forbidden from recruiting mercenaries north of the Taurus or harboring fugitives from Roman territory. Hand over 20 hostages, including his own son, Antiochus IV, who'd later become king. Hostages rotated every 3 years except the king's son. He stayed. Deliver 40,500 modii of grain annually to Rome. Pergamon received Thrace and most of Asia Minor west of the Taurus, cities that sided with Rome before Magnesia, granted independence. Antiochus had spent decades rebuilding the Seleucid Empire to near Alexandrian glory. One battle erased it. The Seleucid Empire continued in the east for another century and a half, but never returned to Asia Minor, never threatened Rome again. Magnesia marked the point where Roman hegemony in the eastern Mediterranean became unchallengeable. Within 8 years, Magnesia in 190, Cynocephalae in 197, Rome defeated 2 of the 3 successor states of Alexander the Great. The third, Ptolemaic Egypt, already under Roman protection. The Hellenistic age died on that plain between the Phrygios and Hermos. If you value researched and documented battle history like this, subscribe. It keeps this work going. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. But they require flat, open terrain to gain momentum. They require horses willing to charge into dense formations. Ancient horses, like modern horses, panic at loud noises, won't willingly run into walls of men. Vegetius, writing in the 4th century AD, called scythed chariots a laughingstock, rendered ineffective if a single horse were killed or wounded. That's what happened at Magnesia. Eumenes' archers and slingers specifically targeted the horses. Arrows into the animals? Before the chariots built speed, the chariots panicked, turned back, destroyed the Seleucid left wing before the Romans even engaged. 200 chariots, Macedonian infantry simply opened ranks, let them pass through, killed the drivers from behind. Used by Cyrus the Younger at Cunaxa in 401 BC, Greek mercenaries shouted, clashed shields, horses bolted. Used by Mithridates against Sulla, used by various Persian satraps, almost always ineffective against disciplined troops. Antiochus should have known. Maybe he did. Maybe he deployed them as a psychological weapon, hoping Roman allies would break. They didn't. Eumenes' Pergamene and Achaean troops held, shot the horses, and the weapon destroyed its own side. Psychological impact massive. Romans feared elephants going back to Pyrrhus at Heraclea in 280 BC, when 20 elephants broke Roman lines. But by 190 BC, Romans had fought elephants for 90 years, developed counter tactics, target the legs with pila, use fire and loud noise to panic them. Most importantly, stay flexible. The Macedonian phalanx required elephants to stand in fixed positions between taxias. When those elephants panicked under Roman missile fire, they had nowhere to run except through the phalanx itself. The formation designed to protect them killed them. Roman manipular legion system, smaller units, flexible, can open and close ranks, let elephants pass through or isolated them for killing. Same tactic that beat Hannibal's elephants at Zama. 16,000 men, best trained infantry Antiochus had. Philip's and Alexander's formation, proven for 130 years, unbeatable on flat terrain in set-piece battles. But unbeatable requires conditions, flat ground, room to maneuver, flanks protected. At Magnesia, the phalanx got none of that. Antiochus deployed them in a narrow space between rivers, trying to maximize their frontage. Livy criticizes this. Antiochus concentrated his strongest troops in a small space, unable to use their main strength, mobile pike charges. The phalanx became static. When Eumenes broke the Seleucid left and Roman legions attacked from the front, the phalanx had no support, no cavalry screen, no room to maneuver. In close combat, once formations broke, pikes are useless. Roman gladius, short sword, wins every time. The Seleucid army composition, diverse, impressive, unwieldy. Troops from Media, Galatia, Cappadocia, Arabia, Turkmenistan, Crete, Thrace, multiple languages, different fighting styles, varying levels of training. Galatians fight one way, cataphracts another, Dahais horse archers another. Coordination nightmare. The Roman army, uniform, drilled, experienced. Most of those legionaries were veterans from the Second Macedonian War, some from campaigns against Carthage. Single language, single command structure, mutual trust. The Achaean infantry and Pergamon allies trained to work with Roman formations. When the battle turned chaotic, chariots fleeing, elephants stampeding, cavalry charges, the Romans adapted. The Seleucids fragmented. When he broke the Roman left wing, his correct move was to wheel into the Roman center, hit the legions from behind while the phalanx engaged from the front, crush them between two forces. Instead, he chased the fleeing Romans all the way to their camp, wasted time attacking fortifications, stayed away from the main battle too long. By the time he returned, the phalanx was surrounded and dying. Same error at Raphia. Same error that cost him the war. Personal bravery, tactical blindness. A king leading cavalry charges sounds heroic. A king who loses situational awareness loses battles. But Domitius commanded the legions, Eumenes commanded the allied cavalry, and Scipio Africanus, even sick, advised strategy. 3 experienced generals coordinating, delegating to specialists, trusting subordinates. Antiochus commanded personally, made real-time decisions in the middle of a cavalry charge, couldn't see the whole field, couldn't react when his left collapsed. They relied heavily on missile troops, Dahai horse archers, Mysian bowmen, Elamaean archers, Sirtian slingers. Dampness reduced range and accuracy. Roman pila, thrown weapons, less affected. Roman legionary swords completely unaffected. Close combat in wet conditions favors heavy infantry with shields and short blades. When Antiochus deployed his 70,000 between the Phrygios and Hermos, he walked into the terrain Romans chose. His 12,000 cavalry, his best advantage, constrained by geography. Eumenes, with only 3,000 cavalry, could match him frontally because there wasn't room for flanking maneuvers. In open terrain, Antiochus wins. On that ground, numbers didn't matter. He was aggressive, forced the engagement on favorable ground. Antiochus waited too long in his fortified camp, then came down to fight because his own men were demoralized. Defensive posture that turned desperate. Rome set the tempo. Change 3 things, and Antiochus wins. 1. Don't deploy scythe chariots or deploy them with better support. 2. Position the elephants behind the phalanx, not between taxis where they can stampede through friendly troops. 3. After breaking the Roman left, wheel into their center instead of chasing fugitives. 3 tactical changes, and Seleucid cavalry hits Roman legions from behind, while the phalanx holds them from the front. Rome loses. History changes, but Antiochus made the wrong calls. The Seleucid Empire paid. Modern estimates scale it down to 10,000 Seleucid, 5,000 Roman, accounting for ancient historians' tendency to inflate enemy losses and minimize friendly casualties. Even at modern estimates, Antiochus lost a third of his army. The Romans lost less than 20%. In ancient warfare, an army that loses 30% typically routs. The Seleucid army routed harder. Units broke as soon as the phalanx collapsed. No rallying point, no reserves committed, complete disintegration. Displayed them in the triumph Lucius Scipio held when he returned to Rome. Lucius took the surname Asiaticus, conqueror of Asia, just as his brother took Africanus after Zama. The elephants walked in chains through Roman streets, while crowds cheered, symbol of Eastern power humbled. Hannibal's role contested. Some sources say he was at Magnesia with the Seleucid forces. Others, more reliably, say he'd already fled after losing naval battles, fearing Antiochus would hand him over to Rome in negotiations. The Cambridge Ancient History Analysis, updated 2025, sides with the latter. Hannibal commanded Antiochus's fleet at Eurymedon, lost, retreated to Crete, then to Bithynia. He wasn't at Magnesia. The anecdote about his exchange with Antiochus, quite enough for the Romans, however greedy they are, probably apocryphal or from an earlier conversation. But the sentiment fits. Hannibal knew Roman discipline. He'd seen it destroy larger armies at Zama. Numbers don't win. Strategic impact, immediate and cascading. Cities across Asia Minor switched sides within weeks. The Seleucid fleet abandoned Ephesus. Garrisons surrendered without fighting. The appearance of invincibility Antiochus had built through decades of campaigning shattered in one afternoon. Rome didn't occupy Asia Minor directly, gave it to allies, Pergamon and Rhodes, kept the Greek cities independent, created a buffer of friendly states. Standard Roman strategy. Don't annex, don't govern directly, just ensure nobody threatens you. Worked perfectly. Pergamon stayed loyal for generations. Rhodes remained a Roman ally. The Seleucids, confined east of the Taurus, never recovered. That's approximately 1,250 tons of silver total when you account for the upfront payments. The Seleucid treasury, even after Antiochus's successful eastern campaigns, where he collected tribute from Bactria and Parthia, couldn't sustain it. Antiochus died in 187 BC, 3 years after the treaty, while trying to plunder a temple in Elymais to pay the indemnity. Killed by locals defending their sanctuary, died broke, desperate, trying to rob a temple to pay Rome. His son Seleucus IV inherited the debt and the diminished empire. Eumenes wrecked the left flank. Romans attacked from multiple directions. Elephants panicked. Terrain limited maneuver. The legion's flexibility, small units that can operate independently, open ranks, close ranks, wheel, reform, beat the phalanx rigid cohesion. This wasn't theory. This was 16,000 trained Macedonian phalangites dying because their formation couldn't adapt. Even eastern kingdoms that survived Roman conquest, Parthia, Armenia, adopted heavy cavalry and light infantry tactics, not phalanx warfare. Magnesia killed the Macedonian system that had dominated for 130 years. Appian writes that Antiochus's defeat marked the end of the phalanx's dominance on Hellenistic battlefields. He was right. Caesar faced 60 at Thapsus in 46 BC, armed his 5th legion with axes, told them to strike the legs, and the legion massacred the beasts. Thapsus was the last major use of war elephants in the western Mediterranean. Too expensive to maintain, too unpredictable in battle, too vulnerable to disciplined infantry with anti-elephant weapons. Magnesia was the beginning of the end. 22 elephants stampeding through the Seleucid phalanx proved elephants could lose battles for you as easily as win them. Political realignment. Rome's position as sole Mediterranean superpower solidified. Before Magnesia, three major powers: Rome in the west, Seleucids in the east, Ptolemaic Egypt in the south. After Magnesia, Rome dominant, Seleucids crippled, Egypt a client state, no rivals. The Roman Republic's empire building accelerated. Spain, Gaul, North Africa, the Balkans. Within 50 years, Rome controlled the entire Mediterranean basin. Magnesia made it possible. If Antiochus had won, if the Seleucid Empire held Asia Minor, Rome's eastern expansion stops. Instead, Rome faced no significant opposition until Mithridates in 88 BC, and even then, Rome crushed him within decades. The Great Altar of Pergamon, built with wealth from Seleucid territories, is one of the finest Hellenistic monuments. Roads thrived. Greek cities maintained autonomy under Roman protection. Greek language, philosophy, art flourished. But Greek military independence ended. Rome defended them, but Rome also controlled them. The Hellenistic kingdoms that survived, Ptolemaic Egypt, diminished Seleucids, Bactria, Pontus, existed at Rome's pleasure. Magnesia was the military death of the Hellenistic world, even as Hellenistic culture survived in Roman adaptation. The sources. We rely on Livy and Appian because they're the only comprehensive accounts that survived. Polybius, who lived closer to the events and traveled with Roman armies, wrote about Magnesia, but his account is fragmentary. What we have from Livy and Appian cross-checks enough to trust the basic facts. Troop numbers within range of each other, battle sequence consistent, casualty figures inflated but directionally accurate. Modern archaeology at Magnesia at Sipylum, modern Manisa, hasn't found the battlefield itself. Agricultural activity over 2,000 years destroyed remains, but coins, inscriptions, dedications to the Roman victory exist. The literary sources stand alone, but they stand credibly. Bar Kochva's The Seleucid Army, Organization and Tactics in the Great Campaigns, published by Cambridge University Press in 2025, uses Livy and Appian as foundations for understanding Hellenistic military structure, confirms their troop descriptions, match what we know from other battles and organizational records. Philip, master of the elephants, commanding the phalanx center, dying when his formation broke. Zeuxis and Antipater, the Seleucid envoys who negotiated the truce, walking into Sardis knowing they were about to surrender an empire. Seleucus IV, Antiochus' son, surviving the battle, fleeing to Apamea, inheriting a kingdom 1/3 its former size. Eumenes of Pergamon, the allied king, who bet everything on Rome and won an empire. Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, the Roman legate who commanded the center legions and cracked the phalanx. Scipio Africanus, sick in camp, his tactical reputation ensuring Roman confidence even when he couldn't take the field. The Treaty of Apamea specifics. The hostages included Antiochus IV, later king, who spent years in Rome as a hostage and absorbed Roman culture. When he returned and ruled, he tried Romanizing the Seleucid Empire, introduced gladiatorial games, built Roman-style cities, pushed Hellenistic Roman fusion. It backfired, sparked revolts, contributed to Seleucid fragmentation, but it shows the treaty's long-term impact. The next generation of Seleucid rulers grew up Roman-influenced, Roman-dominated. The naval restrictions, 12 ships only, ensured the Seleucids could never project power west again. The indemnity payments drained resources that could have rebuilt the army. The territorial losses cut tax revenue. Every clause of the treaty was designed not just to punish, but to permanently weaken. It worked. The Seleucids lingered until 63 BC when Pompey annexed Syria, but they never mattered after Apamea. Didn't establish provinces immediately, gave land to Pergamon and Rhodes, freed Greek cities, withdrew. This fits early Roman imperial strategy: control through alliances, not direct rule. Cheaper, easier, creates buffer states, but it's temporary. Within decades, Rome returned, annexed Pergamon in 133 BC when the last Attalid king bequeathed it to Rome in his will, annexed Syria in 63 BC, annexed Egypt in 30 BC. By Augustus, all the territories Antiochus surrendered at Apamea were Roman provinces. Rome's restraint in 188 BC was strategic patience, not generosity. History remembers him for Magnesia. His earlier victories, Panion against Egypt in 200 BC, his eastern campaigns from 212 to 205 BC, his restoration of Seleucid power from Anatolia to Bactria, forgotten because Rome beat him. Fair or not, Magnesia defined him. His empire survived his death by 120 years, but it was always smaller, weaker, tributary to the treaty he signed. The indemnity paid in silver, but the cost was the dynasty's future. Rome's tactical evolution. Magnesia taught Romans that flexibility beats rigidity, combined arms beat single-system armies, and psychological weapons, scythed chariots, war elephants, fail against discipline. These lessons applied in every subsequent Roman war. Against Mithridates, against Parthia, against the Germanic tribes. The manipular legion that won at Magnesia evolved into the cohort system under Marius, but the core principle, flexible, self-sufficient units that adapt to terrain and enemy tactics, remained. Rome learned, Rome adapted. Enemies didn't, that's why Rome won. Skeletal analysis showed battle trauma, pierced skulls, severed limbs, crushed bones. Carbon dating placed the remains between 200 and 150 BC. The burial pits align with Livy's description of the battle site northeast of Magnesia at Sipylum between the Phrygios and Hermos. We may have found where the Seleucid phalanx died. 16,000 men, buried in pits covered over, forgotten for 2,000 years. The highway runs over them now, trucks and cars driving over the place where the Hellenistic age ended, where Rome became unstoppable. Where war elephants stampeded through their own army and the Macedonian phalanx broke forever. December 190 BC. 70,000 lost to 30,000 because tactics matter more than numbers. Flexibility beats rigidity, and one afternoon of mistakes can erase decades of empire building. Antiochus had his victory on the right wing. Rome had the center. In ancient warfare, the center is everything.